Hi, welcome to Breath of Life Christian Teaching Center. I'm Mike Bloom, and I want to talk about the word spiritual, and we're dealing with the resurrection. It seems like every single person that doesn't believe we are going to experience a future resurrection physically from the graves with these very bodies does not understand the definition of the word spiritual. When we go to 1 Corinthians chapter 15, we read Paul using the terms spiritual and natural as he's contrasting the body that we now possess compared to the body that would be in the resurrection. And we read that in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, after in verse 35, the whole question is, with what body do they come? Speaking about people in the resurrection. And you keep reading of references to bodies, you read about it being sown in corruption, raised in incorruption, and so forth. And then he finally makes a statement. It's sown a natural body and raised a spiritual body. And that's in verse 44. There is a natural body and there is a spiritual body. They seem to believe, without looking at the definition and consulting the Greek lexicon, that spiritual, because it has the root word spirit, means a body that's not material, a body that's not physical, it's incorporeal, it's non-tangible, it's spirit making up the body, as if it is a spirit. But the fact is that the human spirit is contained in a physical body, as well as the human soul is contained in a physical body. The soul and the spirit aren't containers. Bodies are containers. The word spiritual in 1 Corinthians 15 and 44 comes from the Greek word pneumatikos. Pneumatikos. And when you look at the definition of pneumatikos, it absolutely has nothing to do with if it's physical or not physical. It's not a contrast between physical, as though natural meant physical, and spiritual, as though spiritual meant non-physical. It would have said it's sown a physical body, but it's raised a spiritual body. But the word spiritual in Greek actually means simply supernatural. It's not even talking about what the body is made out of, as though you're using that as a word to contrast it from the natural, when the natural isn't even physical either. So let's go to the Greek. And in order to do that, I'm going to take you to Strong's numbers. You can see the numbers beside these terms. Spiritual is written beside the number G4152. So we're going to go there now and show you what that definition is in the Greek. When you go to 1 Corinthians 15 and 44, the Greek word that's translated into spiritual is pneumatikos. And notice the root word is pneuma, and that's spirit or breath or air in Greek. So it's spirit, and then the ikos would be the ual suffix, spiritual. And notice that it's supernatural. It's what's regenerate. It's what's religious. It's spiritual. And that has nothing to do with what the body's made out of. If that was talking about what the body's made out of, it wouldn't have an ikos suffix. It would have an inos. It'd be pneumatinos, not pneumatikos. In fact, an early Greek writer, long before the Bible was even written, wrote of a pneumatikos as a machine that was very physical, but was driven by wind or made alive by wind. So a very physical body is made alive by supernatural spirit as opposed to natural life. That's why it's a spiritual body. Jesus Christ died with wounds in his body that killed it when it was mortal. It was no longer mortal, but it was immortal because it still had those wounds. If there had been a healing of those wounds, then you could say his body might have still been mortal after he resurrected, because it couldn't have the wounds that killed it and be alive with a mortal body after it died. unless it was supernaturally given life, unless it was a new, changed spiritual body. The physical, natural body that was mortal turned into a spiritual body that was immortal, because it was natural life making it alive initially, but it was supernatural life, the life of God's Spirit, making it alive in the resurrection. Now, the word natural comes from the Greek word psychikos, and psyche is soul in Greek. Now, if you're going to say that the spiritual body is not physical because spiritual has the root word spirit, and a spirit's not physical, well, you have to say that natural is not a physical body either, because the root word of natural in the Greek is soul, and a soul is not physical. You see, spirits and souls aren't bodies. They're not containers. A body is a container, not a spirit or a soul. Your body contains your soul and your spirit. Your soul and spirit doesn't contain your body. And so when it talks about a body being raised, it's a container being raised. Hallelujah. So it's in distinction from a spiritual body, which is a higher or a body of a renovated nature. And it's translated in English as natural or sensual, the word natural. And in this case, it's natural. We've read it as natural. So that's what we're reading in 1 Corinthians 15 and 44. Now let's turn to verse 36, because everybody that believes in a non-physical resurrection does not understand verse 36. 1 Corinthians 15 and 36 answers the question, with what body do they come, in verse 35? So Paul begins to answer that question, and he actually talks as though it's a ridiculous question, because if you're talking about resurrect, notice the prefix re on the English word resurrect. It means something happens a second time. You make something new, and then you renew it, make it new a second time. The word resurrection comes from the English word resurgence, and it also has the prefix re or re. And to surge with life is followed by an experience of resurgence. And that's exactly what verse 36 is trying to tell us. In answer to the question, with what body do they come, which is talking about the resurrection, he says that, notice the word that which thou sowest is not quickened except it die. Now, it and that are referring to the same thing. That which thou sowest is not quickened except it die. Now, in order for something to die, it must have lived a mortal life. If it was immortal life, it wouldn't be able to die. But it had natural life, which caused it to die, because natural life is mortal life. The thing that you're sowing, which is the body that's going to come forth, that same thing is not quickened except it die. Now, quickened means to make alive. In fact, a lot of translations will use that word, make alive. Here in the International Standard Version, you fool, the seed you plant does not come to life. And the King James uses the word quickened. The plant does not come to life except it dies. Even here, the seed is the referent to the term it. The seed you plant does not come to life unless it, the seed, dies. So let's go back to the King James again. That which thou sowest is not quickened except it die. Now what he's saying here is that the thing you're sowing, the thing you're putting into the ground like a seed, has to die before it's going to be quickened. And that's actually the definition of resurrect. It surged with life once, lost that life and died, and resurges with life. That means it gets life a second time. But when it resurges with life, it's not natural life anymore. It's spiritual. It's supernatural. Notice the root word of supernatural is natural. So it's not natural. It's supernatural. It's not soulish. It's spiritual. So the thing that you're planting in the ground isn't made alive except it die. In order for it to die, It's got to live before it dies. Nothing can be said to have died unless it already had lived. If something had never lived, it never died. It can't die. You can't use the word death or die and apply it to something that didn't live in order to experience that death. Death only happens to things that were alive. So the body that was alive died, and it is quickened or made alive a second time after it dies. So verse 36, it's people that believe in a non-physical resurrection aren't reading verse 36 carefully enough. Look at it. It's saying that the body that these people are going to come with in the resurrection is a body that dies as a requirement for it to be quickened. That which thou sowest is not quickened, except it die. So the requirement for quickening is dying. It had to die. And the same it that had to die is it that is sown or planted into the ground. And in other words, that is the body with which they come. If people would only look at that, but then here's what they do. They go to verse 37 and they don't read verse 36. They never did catch what verse 36 says. And they read verse 37, that which thou sowest not that body that shall be, but bare grain. It may chance of wheat or of some other grain. They don't even read from but bare grain onward to the end. So all of that, they just don't even regard it. They just are thinking of a body. The body that is sown is not the body that shall be. So they think, well, it can't be the body that's buried. It can't be what verse 36 says it has to be. The body that lives, dies, and then is quickened after it dies. They actually are saying that verse 37 is telling us that verse 36 is a lie, when actually verse 37 is clarifying further information after you understand verse 36. You see, if verse 37 was saying, the body that you sow is not the body that shall be, and that's supposed to mean it's a completely different body. Here's the body that was sown. Here's the body that shall be. The body that's sown goes into the ground and dies. And then it's just discarded and left there, and a different body altogether comes up instead. It would be saying what verse 36 says is wrong. It would be telling us that verse 36 is an error. But verse 36 is not an error, it's a truth, and verse 37 elaborates on that and tells us more about the resurrection body. Because verse 36 says, the very thing that you sow dies, and then it's made alive, not something else apart from that which dies, not something else that discards that which dies and replaces that which dies and rises in its place. No, the very thing that is planted has died and has to die, implying that it already had life previously, and it had to be mortal life if it died or it wouldn't have died, and it's made alive a second time. And once you understand that, then the only explanation verse 37 can give you, when you read it with verse 36, is that when it says, that which thou sowest not that body that shall be, it's talking about a certain kind of body. The same thing that lived and died is that which is made alive a second time in verse 36. But it's a different kind of body. So it's speaking about kind of body, not a different body altogether. As though the body that was buried isn't changed and then it's raised. You see, the reason it's not the body that is sown is because it's actually trying to tell us the body that was sown was mortal and changed and was altered to become the body that's raised. So it's not the same body in the sense that it's not the same kind. It doesn't have natural life anymore. It's not a natural body anymore. The natural body was altered. It was transformed and it changed into a spiritual body, a supernatural body. Natural became supernatural. So it's not the same body in that sense. So that which thou sowest It's the natural body, and it dies, and it's made alive, but it's a spiritual body when it's made alive. It's a different kind of body. It's not the body of the natural. It's the body of the supernatural. And that all-important term changed, transformed, or altered is actually what is written in this chapter if you keep reading. When you go down to verse 51, the Bible talks about a mystery. We're not all going to sleep or die, but we're all going to be changed, whether we're dead or alive. In a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, we're all going to be changed. Changed in what? He's talking about with what body do they come. So it's a change in the body. It's going to happen in a moment. It's going to be in the twinkling of an eye at the last trump. That trumpet's going to sound. And because it says we all shall be changed in a moment, we all will be changed in the twinkling of an eye. We all will be changed at the last trump, which is a single time, a single point in time, means it's all going to happen at the same time for everybody. It says we all shall be changed, comma, not period, comma, in a moment. We're all going to be changed in a moment. We're all going to, the same moment in which we're all going to be changed. What in the non-physical resurrection that people believe is going to happen for each of us fits the criteria of verse 36? What is it that lived and dies so that it is made alive after it lived, followed by its subsequent death? Stay posted for more videos along this line. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed and give us a big thumbs up. God bless.